In this video, we're going to dive deep into 3 hours of Family Guy lore to fall asleep to, but it's depressive episodes. We'll analyze episodes that delve into melancholic, emotionally heavy, or genuinely sad themes and character experiences. And our story begins with a profound look at existential dread and the shattering of trust, right from one of Brian and Stewie's most intimate and unsettling conversations. Our journey begins with Season 08, Episode 17, an episode that traps our two most complex characters, Brian and Stewie, in a small, inescapable room, forcing them to confront the darkest truths about their relationship. The scene opens with a tense argument, Stewie accusing Brian of being an asshole and intentionally trying to hurt him. Brian, in a moment of raw honesty, confirms this, telling Stewie he might as well get used to it, as worse is to come once he starts school. This immediate admission of malice sets an unsettling tone, hinting at deeper emotional wounds. Stewie, feeling Brian's jab, decides to retaliate, launching into a shocking confession. He declares that he doesn't truly care about Brian, viewing him merely as the best of a bad situation, a means to an end. "I use you, man," Stewie states, cutting deep into the presumed bond they share. Brian, incredulous, attempts to deny it, but Stewie presses on with a revelation that is nothing short of psychological torture. He confesses that he once tricked Brian into eating his own feces, not because he was afraid of getting sick, as Brian believed, but purely because I wanted to see if I could. The sheer audacity and cold calculation behind this act are chilling, as Stewie admits he was simply bored, seeking to discover how low I can get this douchebag to go. He even adds a final, crushing blow. "And when you did it, I actually felt sorry for you." This moment serves as the episode's harrowing climax, a brutal unmasking of Stewie's manipulative core and the profound humiliation inflicted upon Brian. Brian's reaction is one of utter devastation, calling Stewie a monster and a son of a bitch, even contemplating violence, stating, "I could kill you for that." The tension escalates as Stewie taunts Brian with a gun, daring him to pull the trigger, revealing it to be empty, a further layer of cruel manipulation. Brian, however, desperately tries to reclaim some agency, falsely claiming there are bullets, a moment of fragile, desperate bravado. The profound insight here is the complete breakdown of trust, revealing Brian's vulnerability and Stewie's capacity for calculated sadism. The humiliation doesn't end there, though. Brian then notices a security camera, a fleeting spark of hope that someone might see their predicament. But Stewie quickly extinguishes it, stating, "No one's out there, Brian. There were no cars in the lot when we came in. Save your energy." The true horror then dawns on Brian. Their entire, humiliating exchange, including the confession about the feces, is all on tape. Stewie vividly paints a picture of their public downfall, imagining office workers gleefully typing "dog baby hiney lick" into search engines. Brian, utterly defeated, murmurs, "I'm going to be so humiliated." The episode concludes with both characters trapped, reflecting on their shared, bleak future with a simple, despairing exchange. How long is this going to last? No idea. This quiet, unsettling ending leaves the listener with a profound sense of existential dread and the lasting scars of betrayal and public shame. It's a stark reminder that even the most absurd scenarios can hide truly agonizing emotional realities. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to help the channel grow. Now let's continue with feelings of obsolescence within the Griffin household. The episode opens with the usual gang, Peter, Quagmire, Cleveland, Joe, and Brian, watching a crude parody of Jackass on television. Their uproarious laughter at grotesque stunts, like a character enduring a shotgun blast to the face, sets a disturbing precedent for the reckless behavior to come. Peter, ever the instigator, gets a dangerous idea, to replicate these stunts at home. What follows is a series of increasingly violent and bizarre stunts. Peter, pushed in a shopping cart by Quagmire and Cleveland, flies off the roof, landing with a horribly contorted spine before projectile vomiting onto Brian. Later, a naked Quagmire, smeared with honey, is swarmed by angry bees after Peter antagonizes them. Even Brian isn't spared, as Joe, in his wheelchair, shaves a strip of fur and skin from his head, causing him to yelp in pain. The culminating stunt sees Peter, dressed as a superhero on roller skates, being towed by the family car only to crash into a pine tree and fall into a lake. Brian, despite his own injuries and the absurdity of the situation, heroically jumps in to save the injured Peter, pulling him to shore with Joe's help. Back home, Lois scolds Peter, emphasizing Brian's age in human years, a comment that sparks Peter's fixation on Brian being old. This seemingly innocent remark triggers a cascade of events that reveal Brian's deep-seated anxieties. Peter's attempts to relate to Brian are clumsy and insensitive, from trying to use slang while wearing a ridiculous helmet to adopting the persona of an 80s preppy bully. Brian is visibly unimpressed, and a melancholic montage of Peter walking alone, reminiscent of The Incredible Hulk, underscores the growing emotional distance. The true heartbreak begins when Peter, after a half-hearted apology, introduces new Brian, a younger, fluffier, and seemingly perfect dog. The family, initially shocked, quickly embraces this new addition with overwhelming enthusiasm. New Brian is a whirlwind of domestic perfection. He plays the flute, bakes, sings karaoke, and plays guitar, embodying everything the Griffins seemingly desire in a pet. Brian, feeling utterly replaced and erased from their lives, quietly gathers his luggage and leaves. His attempts to find solace with Quagmire and Cleveland are short-lived, as their chaotic living situations prove unbearable. The scene where he tearfully says goodbye to the family is a gut punch, a moment of profound abandonment. In a desperate attempt to win them back, Brian returns, showing the family old home movies of himself as an adorable puppy. The tactic works, and the family is overcome with emotion, welcoming him back. But the reprieve is tragically short-lived. New Brian farts. Peter mistakenly blames original Brian, and in a shocking turn, kicks him out again, even contemplating putting him down like Old Yeller with a shotgun. Stewie intervenes, clarifying that new Brian was the culprit, temporarily saving Brian. The narrative then takes a dark, irreversible turn. Stewie, witnessing the family's continued adoration for new Brian during a karaoke night, becomes annoyed. He confronts new Brian, who nonchalantly admits to humping Stewie's beloved teddy bear, Rupert. Enraged, Stewie retaliates with extreme prejudice. The chilling visual of Stewie dragging a large, heavy trash bag with a blood trail out to the curb leaves no doubt about new Brian's fate. Peter, oblivious, reads new Brian's supposed suicide note, and the family's brief sadness quickly gives way to Peter introducing a new pet hamster. The chapter concludes with a truly heartbreaking image. Stewie in the shower, sadly washing Rupert, the only one who truly feels the weight of his actions and the emotional cost of his loyalty to his bear. This episode, beneath its comedic veneer, is a deeply melancholic exploration of replacement, the pain of being unappreciated, and the casual cruelty that can exist even within a family. Brian's experience highlights the fragility of belonging and the devastating impact of feeling obsolete, a quiet desperation that many can relate to. The sting of being replaced, or nearly so, by a new Brian was a profound humiliation for Brian, but it wasn't the only source of his recurring sorrow. Time and again, Brian has chased happiness, only to find it just out of reach, especially in matters of the heart. Our journey continues with Season 04, Episode 15, an episode that delves into Brian's persistent melancholic undertones, particularly his academic anxieties, and the quiet despair of unfulfilled potential. The episode opens with the classic Family Guy theme, then transitions to Peter, Quagmire, Cleveland, and Joe, dressed as the A-Team at an 80s television convention. Brian is also there, dressed as Douglas Brackman from LA Law, claiming to be writing an article for the Daily Shopper. He's trying to be serious, intellectual, but Peter and his friends are consumed by their costume contest, which they triumphantly win. Brian's article, titled TV Convention Gets Good Reception by Brian Griffin, earns him praise from Lois, who says it almost felt like it was written by a real writer. Stewie, however, ever the sharp critic, cuts deep, suggesting Brian should spend less time on the paper and more on his novel, prompting Brian to punch him. This immediate deflection hints at Brian's insecurity about his writing and intellectual pursuits. Then comes a pivotal moment. Brian receives a call from Wellesley Shepperton, an editor at The New Yorker, who saw his Daily Shopper article while shooing away a homeless person. He invites Brian to become a contributor. This is Brian's dream, a chance to finally be recognized as the sophisticated intellectual he believes himself to be. Stewie, with typical cynicism, remarks that Brian will fit in, as well as I did at Woodstock, a cutaway scene showing Stewie as a hippie, lecturing the crowd on the illegality of marijuana, further highlighting Brian's potential awkwardness in such an elevated environment. Brian visits the New Yorker office, a lavish writer's lounge filled with men with distinctive large chins. He tries to impress them, even mentioning his attendance at Brown, an Ivy League university. However, when asked about his graduation year, Brian admits he didn't technically graduate. This revelation shatters the illusion. The editor, in a shocking display of elitism, instantly fires Brian, declaring, "The New Yorker does not employ your kind. You, sir, are fired." Brian is unceremoniously thrown out. A "No Dogs Allowed" sign hung on the door, a cruel, literal depiction of his exclusion. We see Brian sadly mimicking Snoopy on a doghouse, a poignant image of defeat. Back home, Brian confesses to Lois and Chris that he cracked under the pressure and was only one course shy of graduating. This unfulfilled potential has haunted him for years. Lois, ever practical, suggests he simply go back and finish. Stewie, of course, finds this boring and runs off to annoy Meg. Brian returns to Brown, where Stewie, hiding in his duffel bag, reveals his intention to watch Brian crash and burn. Brian's new roommate, Caleb, is a self-harmer, a grim detail that adds to the unsettling atmosphere. Stewie, in a bizarre turn, successfully convinces Caleb that he is Brian's roommate by creating a crude answering machine message about needing money for condoms for sexual relations, further complicating Brian's attempt at a serious academic comeback. Brian's return to college is fraught with challenges. In an advanced physics class, a female student, Pepper, sprays him after an orientation seminar on rape, highlighting the extreme and often absurd social anxieties prevalent on campus. The professor, a Stephen Hawking-like figure, immediately puts pressure on Brian, announcing a test and threatening expulsion if he fails. The A-Team subplot, where Peter and his friends repeatedly cause chaos and destruction in their misguided attempts to help people, serves as a chaotic backdrop to Brian's personal struggle, a stark contrast to his earnest, if flawed, intellectual pursuits. Stewie, in a moment of unexpected support, provides Brian with a completed paper for his physics assignment. Brian initially resists, claiming it would be cheating, but his frustration and desperation lead him to retrieve the crumpled paper from the trash and copy it. He passes the assignment, receiving a rare compliment from the professor, who even draws a crude smiley face on his test. This fleeting success is immediately tainted by Brian's guilt. At a college party, he confesses to Stewie, "I cheated on that assignment," a moment of quiet despair amidst the revelry. The episode's climax sees Peter and his A-Team failing to save Roger Williams Park from demolition, getting sidetracked by idle conversation, a commentary on their inherent ineffectiveness. Brian, meanwhile, faces his final exam. After initially failing and feeling like a loser, he decides to study, coached by Stewie in a Rocky IV parody montage. The A-Team, in a rare moment of effective support, crashes through the university walls to get Brian to his exam on time. However, despite the dramatic entrance and his renewed commitment, Brian ultimately fails. Yet, he finds a small measure of peace in having taken it all the way and not cheating, even as his family dismisses him as a loser. This episode paints a melancholic picture of unfulfilled ambition, the crushing weight of societal expectations, and the quiet dignity of integrity even in failure. Brian's journey is a poignant reminder that even when we strive for our dreams, external judgment and internal demons can make success an elusive, heartbreaking pursuit. Brian's academic failures were a blow, a quiet despair of unfulfilled potential, but they pale in comparison to the raw, devastating grief that can shatter a family when a beloved member is suddenly and violently taken away. This next chapter explores loss so profound, it fundamentally changes the fabric of the Griffin household. Our journey continues with Season 12, Episode 06, an episode that confronts the raw, devastating grief experienced by the Griffins after an unexpected and tragic loss, leaving a permanent scar on the series. The episode opens with Brian and Stewie on the run from Native Americans, a chaotic scene of gunshots, and a desperate escape over a bridge. They are cornered, forced to jump into the water, and fired upon. After emerging, dirty and scratched, Stewie reveals his time machine's return pad is broken. They are stranded in the past, in a time populated entirely by Native Americans, a setting that is both alien and dangerous. The core of the episode's initial conflict revolves around Stewie's past actions. He had previously given guns to the Native Americans, a decision that has now radically altered the timeline, creating a technologically advanced, yet still culturally distinct, Native American society. Brian and Stewie hide in an alley, observing a bustling city filled with jean jacket stores and a hospital where a medicine man performs rituals. They eventually sneak into a teepee-style house, a Native American version of the Griffin home, complete with a buffalo in the living room. Here, they find Stewie's original wooden time machine and a wooden return pad. Their attempt to fix the timeline is fraught with complications. They travel back to the moment past Stewie was giving guns to the Native Americans, only to find past Brian flirting with a Native American woman. Present Stewie confronts Brian about it, but the distraction causes present Stewie to drop the return pad, accidentally sending them back to the altered present. They manage to retrieve the guns from the Native Americans, returning them to their traditional bows and arrows, and finally return to their original timeline. Upon returning, Stewie, with a laptop, researches the effects of their meddling, but the true tragedy of the episode unfolds shortly after. Brian discovers Stewie dismantling his time machine, explaining he's getting rid of it. Brian tries to talk him out of it, but Stewie is firm, wanting to eliminate the dangerous technology. A flashback shows Stewie buying a toy at a Christmas toy store, a poignant reminder of his childlike desires. The time machine is then taken to a junkyard and completely crushed, a symbolic end to their adventures, and, tragically, to Brian's life as they know it. As Brian and Stewie walk home, sad about the loss of the time machine, they find a red street hockey net. Brian suggests they play, but Stewie is still dejected. In a heartbreaking turn, a silver car speeds down the street and hits Brian, mangling him. Stewie watches in horror. The Griffin family rushes out to find Brian bleeding on the street, a squirrel even running up to kick him. At the Quahog veterinary clinic, the family waits anxiously. Dr. Hartman, grim-faced, delivers the devastating news. Brian's injuries are too severe. The family gathers around Brian on the operating table, heavily bandaged and bleeding. In his last moments, Brian, with profound sadness, expresses his love for them and dies, the heart monitor flatlining. The family's raw, unfiltered grief is palpable as they cry over his body, holding each other in the dark operating room. The impact of Brian's death is immediate and deep. Stewie, consumed by anger and sorrow, breaks his hockey stick and throws the net in the trash. He desperately tries to find a way to get a replacement part for his destroyed time machine, approaching a kebab stand owner named Yusuf, who tragically cannot help him. The funeral for Brian is a somber affair, attended by many Quahog residents. Peter, in typical fashion, goes through several bizarre costume changes during the eulogies, reflecting his inability to process grief in a conventional way. Yet his tears are genuine. Lois delivers a heartfelt eulogy, and Stewie, in a moment of pure, innocent despair, drops a rose into the open grave, crying as it's filled. The family, now without Brian, tries to move on. Lois suggests getting a new dog, and Peter, after a Ghostbusters joke, agrees. They go to Quahog Pets, where Peter is drawn to Vinny, a street-smart Italian-American dog. Vinny, a pussy hound, a term Peter hilariously misunderstands, quickly makes himself at home, cooking for Lois, bonding with Chris and Meg, and drinking beer with Peter. Stewie, however, remains deeply resentful. He tries to sabotage Vinny, first by making Play-Doh pasta for Lois, then by having a skunk spray Vinny. But the turning point comes when Stewie, sitting alone with Rupert, confesses to Vinny that he's crying because he misses Brian. Vinny, in a moment of unexpected empathy, comforts Stewie, sharing a story about his own lost owner, Leo. This shared experience of grief creates an unlikely bond between them. Vinny and Stewie hug, becoming friends, and Vinny even jumps into Stewie's crib at night, offering companionship. This episode is a profound exploration of loss, grief, and the struggle to find connection after tragedy. Brian's death and the family's subsequent mourning are depicted with a rare sincerity for Family Guy, forcing the characters, especially Stewie, to confront the crushing reality of absence and the difficult, often melancholic path to healing. The introduction of Vinny, while initially a source of conflict, ultimately highlights the human and canine need for connection and shared understanding in the face of profound sadness. The sudden, devastating loss of Brian plunged the Griffins into profound grief, forcing them to confront an absence that felt unbearable. But what happens when that grief becomes so potent, so unbearable, that one character is willing to defy time itself to undo the pain? 8. An episode that powerfully examines the profound impact of absence and the desperate measures taken to mend a broken heart, showcasing Stewie's melancholic resolve. The episode opens with the Griffin family watching a Christmas-themed Home Alone parody on television, but the festive cheer is undercut by a brutal scene where the child is shot dead by robbers. This dark humor sets a tone for the unexpected tragedy that is about to unfold. The family discusses their Christmas plans, with Chris excited about a Christmas carnival. Peter, in a flashback, hilariously attempts to buy a diamond ring at Tiffany & Co., while wearing paper towel wrappers on his feet. The scene then shifts to the Quahog Mall, where the family discovers the Christmas carnival has been canceled. Stewie, dressed as an elf, is deeply upset. The new family dog, Vinny, who joined the family after Brian's death, is present, highlighting the void Brian left behind. Vinny, in a moment of unexpected insight, explains that Carter Pewterschmidt canceled the carnival. Peter vows to confront Carter to restore the Christmas spirit. We see Peter attempting to rekindle Carter's holiday cheer through various antics, including a parody of A Christmas Carol, but the efforts are largely in vain, and one of Stewie's own attempts to create a festive display results in a massive explosion, turning the neighborhood into a fiery wasteland, with Stewie surveying the destruction in goggles. The heart of this episode, however, lies in Stewie's profound grief over Brian's death. At the now restored Christmas carnival, Stewie sits on Santa's lap, a poignant image of a heartbroken child. When asked what he wants for Christmas, Stewie, with tears in his eyes, confesses that all he wants is his friend Brian back, who is dead. Vinny watches, a silent witness to Stewie's raw sorrow. In the aftermath, Vinny, in an attempt to comfort Stewie, tries to fill Brian's shoes. He appears wearing glasses and a sweater, reading the newspaper, a clear nod to Brian's intellectual interests. Vinny even presents his own version of Brian's self-help book, Wish It, Want It, Do It, calling his Wish It, Want It, You Blew It. Despite these efforts, Stewie remains deeply sad. Vinny offers to take him to the mall to buy a present, recognizing that material distractions might help. At the toy store, a glimmer of hope appears. Stewie, still grieving, sees his past self from another timeline. He realizes that this past Stewie has the time machine's return pad, the very device he needs to go back in time and save Brian. A desperate plan forms. Stewie devises a scheme to steal the return pad from his past self, with Vinny acting as a crucial distraction. Vinny, in a charming and absurd sequence, pretends to be a model scout, distracting past Stewie with promises of fame, while present Stewie covertly snatches the return pad from his backpack. The scene in the toy store's back room is a deeply emotional climax. Stewie explains to Vinny that by saving Brian, he will effectively erase their shared timeline, meaning they will never have met. They share a poignant, bittersweet goodbye, a testament to the unexpected bond they formed in the shadow of grief. With a heavy heart, Stewie activates the time machine pad and disappears. Stewie reappears on the street just as the car is about to hit Brian. He heroically shoves Brian out of the way, saving his life. The car instead hits an inflatable hockey net. Stewie, overcome with relief, embraces Brian, explaining he came from the future. As he speaks, he begins to fade away, his existence in this altered timeline being erased. He fully disappears, and the time machine pad vanishes with him. Back in the toy store, the return pad reappears in past Stewie's backpack, and past Stewie, with no memory of Vinny or the encounter, looks confused. The episode concludes on Christmas morning in the restored timeline. Brian and Stewie are in front of their house. Brian, unaware of the sacrifice, is hit in the groin with a hockey stick by Stewie, a familiar dynamic restored. Later, during present opening, Brian gives Stewie a framed photo of the two of them with a plaque that reads, "Friends Forever." They share a heartfelt moment, completely oblivious to the profound, melancholic journey Stewie undertook to bring Brian back. This episode is a powerful, albeit tragic, exploration of grief, sacrifice, and the enduring bond of friendship, even when one party is forever unaware of the immense cost. Stewie's heroic act of sacrificing his own existence to save Brian was a testament to their bond, a powerful and melancholic display of love. But even with life restored, some wounds run deeper than time itself. Brian, for all his sophisticated airs, carries a profound yearning for his past, a desire to understand where he came from, even if the truth is heartbreaking. Our journey continues with Season 02, Episode 13, titled Road to Rhode Island, an episode that traces Brian's poignant journey to confront his past and the bittersweet, ultimately unsettling, encounter with his origins. The episode opens with Brian, in a therapy session, confessing his innermost thoughts while smoking, a classic image of a troubled intellectual. At the breakfast table, Lois mentions that Stewie is visiting his grandparents in Palm Springs, and Brian, ever the loyal companion, offers to pick him up. The journey begins, but not without its mishaps. At the airport, Stewie's backpack, filled with an absurd arsenal of weapons, triggers an alarm. To create a distraction, Stewie performs a tap dance routine to On the Good Ship Lollipop, a bizarre but effective diversion. Osama bin Laden, waiting in line, is then caught with his own bag of weapons, a classic Family Guy cutaway. Brian, meanwhile, is at an airport bar, unsuccessfully hitting on a woman, a recurring theme of his romantic frustrations. He eventually gets drunk and passes out. Stewie, unable to wake him, tries to drag him to their departing flight, even attempting to sneak onto the plane by replacing a baby in a carriage, only to be discovered and thrown off. Stranded, Brian and Stewie end up at a rundown motel with a sign advertising, "Prostitutes ask about our continental breakfast." Brian is still passed out, and Stewie, unable to remember a phone number, futilely dials 867-5309. This moment of helplessness underscores their predicament, far from the comforts of home. The true emotional core of the episode emerges when Brian, still hazy from his drinking, reveals his deeper purpose for wanting to go to Texas, to visit his birthplace, a puppy mill. He and Stewie drag the taxidermied body of Brian's mother out of a mini-mart, an unsettling visual that foreshadows the melancholic discoveries to come. Brian digs a grave in a park, gently placing the stuffed dog inside, a heartbreaking ritual for a mother he barely knew. As they travel by train, Brian and Stewie perform a musical number, Road to Rhode Island, a classic road trip trope that momentarily lightens the mood, but the underlying sadness of Brian's quest remains. They eventually arrive at the puppy mill, and Brian confronts the farmer, Luke, who operated the establishment. The farmer assures Brian that his mother, Biscuit, was a good dog. However, the bittersweet reunion takes a truly dark turn when the farmer points to the taxidermied body of Biscuit, now serving as an end table in his living room. Brian is horrified, and Stewie, with typical dark humor, makes a pun about her being in stitches. This revelation is a profound shock for Brian, shattering any romanticized notions he might have had about his origins. His mother, not only gone, but reduced to a piece of furniture, is a disturbing symbol of his past and the harsh realities of his birth. Brian and Stewie carry the taxidermied dog away from the farm, a melancholic act of reclaiming his mother's dignity. Later, attempting to fly home, Brian and Stewie take over a biplane from a farmer who fired his pilot for getting his daughter pregnant. Despite Brian's confidence, the plane immediately crashes into a pile of hay and cows, forcing them to hitch a ride in the back of a truck with migrant workers. Brian's attempts at speaking broken Spanish are humorously corrected by a worker who then reverts to Spanish, another instance of his struggles to connect beyond his immediate sphere. Upon their eventual return home, Lois and Peter are engrossed in a relationship help video, which features Lois herself in black lingerie, a bizarre and comedic subplot that contrasts sharply with Brian's emotional journey. Brian, grateful for Stewie's discretion, thanks him for not revealing his drinking to Lois. The episode ends with Chris still trying to guess the word Meg is thinking of, a return to mundane family life after Brian's emotionally charged quest. This episode is a poignant exploration of identity, the search for roots, and the often disappointing reality of confronting one's past. Brian's melancholic journey to find his mother, only to discover her in such a disturbing state, highlights the inherent sadness in seeking closure that can never truly be found. It's a reminder that sometimes the answers we seek bring more pain than comfort. The discovery of his mother as a taxidermied end table was a cruel twist of fate for Brian, a melancholy truth about his origins. But sometimes the deepest despair comes not from a distant past, but from an immediate, horrifying mistake, where the weight of accidental culpability can crush the soul. Our journey continues with Season 08, Episode 08E, an episode that analyzes Brian's intense moral dilemma and the crushing weight of accidental culpability, revealing his capacity for profound guilt and the lengths he will go to escape it. The episode begins with Brian engrossed in a political commentary show on his laptop, while Stewie, with his typical mischievousness, observes him. This intellectual pursuit is quickly interrupted when Peter and Quagmire, in the kitchen, cause a huge mess by spilling Kool-Aid. Lois, returning home, is furious and demands Peter clean it up, but he defiantly refuses. This domestic squabble serves as a prelude to a more significant conflict when Lois announces she has hired a maid, Consuela. Peter, despite their financial situation, objects. Consuela, a stout Hispanic woman, is introduced to the family. Stewie, ever the observant one, questions her appearance. Later, Brian, dressed in a black suit, proudly announces to Lois, Meg, and Stewie that he is receiving an award for his writing from the Rhode Island Society for Special Literary Excellence. His family, however, seems unimpressed, a recurring theme of Brian's artistic and intellectual aspirations being undervalued. Stewie, with a small camera, captures Brian's excitement, foreshadowing his later use of this evidence. Brian arrives at the award ceremony, only to discover it's held at a pizza parlor, and is a group of adults with intellectual disabilities. The chaperone, Kathy, clarifies the situation, and Brian's face falls in dismay. He is presented with a handmade award, a piece of paper with macaroni and glitter, while another member of the society yells at him to smell his finger. This moment is a profound humiliation for Brian, shattering his illusions of being recognized by a prestigious literary society. His dreams of intellectual validation are crushed, replaced by a deep sense of disappointment and pity. Drowning his sorrows at a bar, Brian, now drunk, drives home in his car. In a moment of tragic carelessness, he hits a brown dog that runs out in front of his car. He gets out to check on it, and in a gruesome detail, its lower half detaches, revealing a trail of guts. Brian recoils in horror. Overcome with panic and guilt, he drags the dead dog's body into a vacant lot and buries it. Stewie, from his bedroom window, watches with an evil smile, a silent witness to Brian's crime and his subsequent cover-up. The weight of this accidental killing immediately begins to consume Brian. He is shown chain-smoking, traumatized by the flashback of the dog in the headlights. Stewie, ever the tormentor, appears next to him, taunting him. Brian then sees a "Have you seen me?" ad in the newspaper, featuring a picture of the dog he killed. He tries to call the number, but Consuela, now firmly entrenched in the Griffin household, intervenes, dragging him away from the phone and hanging up. Consuela's presence in the house also creates further comedic tension, as she repeatedly cleans things to Peter's annoyance, even taking his lamp. Stewie, having witnessed Brian's crime, decides to use it to his advantage. He shows Brian a photograph of him burying the dog, effectively blackmailing him. With Stewie's leverage, Brian is forced to confess to the family. He gathers everyone in the living room, including Joe, who is in his police uniform. Brian, somber and prepared for arrest, confesses to committing a murder and covering it up. The family's reaction, however, is not what Brian expects. They burst into laughter. Lois explains that killing a dog is not a crime, merely animal-on-animal crime. Peter even loads a gun and puts it to Brian's head, joking that no one would care if he shot him, a cruel moment that highlights society's casual disregard for animal life and Brian's heightened sensitivity. Brian is left feeling even more isolated in his guilt. The true emotional twist comes later. Brian is sitting in the bathtub, crying, lamenting that nobody cares about animals and that his life has no meaning. Stewie looks at Brian's red collar, which is lying on the bathroom counter. He picks it up and dangles it, a mischievous smile on his face. Stewie then reveals the shocking truth. The dog Brian hit and buried was not a stray, but his own, which he had deliberately replaced with a look-alike. This manipulation, designed to make Brian feel immense guilt, is revealed to be a cruel prank. The episode concludes with the family still mourning Brian, the stray dog, while the real Brian and Stewie watch from the top of the stairs. Brian is touched by the family's grief, realizing how much they truly care about him. Stewie, admitting his deception, and Brian share a hug on the stairs, a complex moment of reconciliation after Stewie's elaborate and profoundly melancholic lesson. Peter, breaking the fourth wall, assures the audience that no animals were harmed before a stage curtain falls on an opera singer. This episode is a deep dive into guilt, the burden of a secret, and the manipulative depths of Stewie's psyche. Brian's despair is genuine, his moral compass deeply disturbed by what he believed he had done. The ultimate revelation that it was a staged event doesn't erase his suffering, but recontextualizes it as a cruel, yet strangely effective, lesson in empathy orchestrated by Stewie. It highlights the disturbing truth that sometimes the pain we experience is a deliberate creation designed to teach us a lesson, however harsh. The revelation that Brian's earlier guilt was a prank, A cruel manipulation by Stewie offered a fleeting sense of relief, but it couldn't erase the underlying vulnerability. Brian's life, for all its comedic absurdity, is often marked by deep-seated struggles, and sometimes those struggles manifest in destructive, self-inflicted ways, leading to a harrowing descent into addiction. Our journey continues with Season 03, Episode 17, an episode that starkly witnesses Brian's descent into addiction and the harrowing struggle for self-redemption, exposing the fragility beneath his intellectual facade. The episode opens with Brian on a date with a woman named Tina at Taste of Sicily Ristorante. He attempts to impress her with talk of opera, but the date is clearly not going well. Upon returning home, dejected, Lois questions him about the date, to which Brian merely shakes his head, indicating another romantic failure. Meanwhile, Peter is intent on growing a beard, inspired by a parody of the life and times of Grizzly Adams, where a jealous bear smashes dishes. Lois, annoyed, asks Peter to take Brian to a laser rock show at the Quahog Planetarium. The trip to the planetarium includes several comedic, yet often dark, cutaways, such as a man giving an unappreciated lecture on binary code, an old man demonstrating electricity to an unimpressed audience, and Quagmire and Peter experiencing virtual reality, with Quagmire imagining himself as a stripper pole, and Peter flying. These lighthearted moments, however, serve to highlight Brian's underlying isolation. During the laser rock show, set to the melancholic tune of One by Three Dog Night, Brian sits dejected, surrounded by affectionate couples. He takes a swig from a flask, a subtle but significant sign of his growing dependency. This moment of quiet despair is a stark contrast to the vibrant laser patterns and the happiness of others. As they drive home, a police car pulls them over. Joe Swanson, in his wheelchair, administers a breathalyzer test to Brian, which loudly indicates he is drunk. Brian is arrested, and Peter slides into the driver's seat, seemingly unconcerned. 1 month later, in the courthouse, Brian appears nervous. Peter, now sporting a thick, bushy beard, sits behind Brian with Lois and Stewie. The judge finds Brian guilty and sentences him to 100 hours of community service. This legal consequence pushes Brian further into his melancholic state. Brian's community service involves taking care of an old woman named Pearl Burton. His initial arrival at her lavender-colored house is less than welcoming, as she covers him in delousing powder, leaving him itching on the floor. While Peter embarks on a bizarre subplot of a bird making a nest in his beard, Brian begins to bond with Pearl. He is captivated by her beautiful opera, singing, a testament to his appreciation for culture and artistry. Their relationship develops through a long, psychedelic musical montage. You've got a lot to see. Brian and Pearl dance through various decades, their outfits changing to match the eras, encountering references to the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, including political correctness posters and hair restoration clinics. The song culminates with them running up a winding path towards a floating door, a metaphor for their shared journey and the life Pearl has yet to fully experience. However, this newfound connection and hope are brutally cut short. Immediately after leaving her house, Pearl is tragically hit and killed by a large truck. The sudden, senseless death of Pearl is a devastating blow to Brian, a cruel reminder of the fleeting nature of happiness and connection. At the hospital, Brian finds Pearl unresponsive, hooked up to machines. A doctor casually tells Brian to let the disorderly know when he's ready to leave, highlighting the callousness of the medical system towards the dying. In a final act of profound love and sorrow, Brian uses the virtual reality kit from the planetarium to give Pearl a last, beautiful experience. In this virtual world, they get married, are carried into a honeymoon suite, dine in Paris, and dance on a cruise ship. As the heart monitor flatlines, Brian removes the VR headsets, tears welling in his eyes, and says goodbye to Pearl. The doctor, once again, casually announces her death. The episode concludes with Brian sadly drinking a martini at the Drunken Clam. Peter, now clean-shaven, sits with him. A sultry bird at the bar makes a pass at Peter, who tells Brian he's not ready, a final ironic touch on Peter's own emotional journey. This episode is a powerful and deeply melancholic portrayal of addiction, unexpected loss, and the search for meaning. Brian's alcoholism is not played for laughs, but presented as a genuine struggle, leading to real consequences. His bond with Pearl, however brief, offers a glimpse of hope and redemption, making her tragic death all the more heartbreaking. It's a stark reminder that even in a comedic series, characters can face profound personal tragedies that leave lasting emotional scars, and that sometimes the only solace is a final, shared, virtual dream. Brian's journey to confront his past was filled with bitter disappointment, and his struggle with alcoholism exposed a deep vulnerability. But sometimes it's not just personal demons or accidental culpability that bring despair. It's the isolating consequences of controversial choices and the societal judgment that follows, leaving a character utterly alone. Our journey continues with Season 05, Episode 07, an episode that explores the isolating consequences of Brian's controversial choices and the societal judgment he faces, leading him down a path of increasing despair. The episode begins with the Griffin family watching a news report about the child actress Olivia Fuller, known for tasty juice commercials. Stewie, who knows Olivia from performing arts school, expresses his disdain for her, vowing to heckle her roundly and humiliate her at an upcoming mall appearance. This sets up Stewie's own emotional journey within the episode, which mirrors Brian's theme of social isolation. A cutaway gag showing Luke Skywalker sandbagging a fellow rebel pilot in front of their peers highlights the theme of public humiliation and social ostracization. Meanwhile, Peter and Lois are at a chick flick, Autumn's Piano, which unexpectedly moves Peter to tears. He then claims the movie helped him understand sarcasm, leading to a cutaway where a foreign man explains sarcasm to a confused Peter. These subplots, while comedic, indirectly comment on social understanding and connection, or the lack thereof. At the Quahog Mall, Stewie and Brian watch Olivia at the grand opening of a children's clothing store. Stewie, initially intent on heckling her, is stunned by how fantastic she looks, now a sophisticated young woman. He awkwardly attempts to reconnect, inviting her to his Bernie Mac night. Olivia, however, gently rejects him, stating she's dating more sophisticated men now. This rejection, delivered with a polite but firm tone, leaves Stewie dejected, feeling inadequate and not grown up enough. Brian, witnessing Stewie's heartbreak, tries to comfort him. A cutaway featuring the mayor of comedy selling sitcom punchlines of the 80s further underscores themes of dated humor and the struggle to connect in a changing world. Brian, meanwhile, is shown in the bathroom, styling his hair for a date, trying to project an image of a confident underachiever every woman wants to sleep with. Stewie, still reeling from Olivia's rejection, declares he needs to be more grown up. In a bizarre attempt to achieve this, he pulls a clump of hair from Brian's brush and flushes it down the toilet, then tries to act mature by letting his pubes hang out, much to Brian's disgust. Brian, exasperated, offers Stewie advice on how to get women, suggesting they observe Quagmire. They witness Quagmire, in a diaper, rudely berating a naked woman on his lawn, only for her to respond positively. Stewie, drawing a disturbing conclusion, decides that women like it when you treat them like crap. He then approaches Olivia's doorstep, dressed in a leather jacket and smoking a cigarette, and proceeds to insult her, calling her ugly and comparing her skin to a decorative autumn squash. To his shock, Olivia responds positively, agreeing to a date. This moment is a disturbing commentary on certain toxic relationship dynamics. Stewie, triumphant, believes he has found the key to maturity and attraction. He and Olivia go to a park, where he continues his rude behavior, making fun of passers-by, including a Jewish cowboy and an uptight Asian guy. Olivia, seemingly enjoying this, leans on Stewie's shoulder. This shared, cynical humor creates an unsettling bond. Meanwhile, Peter, having discovered chick movies, decides to make his own, Steel Vaginas. The production is chaotic and insensitive, with Peter forcing Joe to lose the wheelchair and using peanut butter to make Chris talk. The premiere is a disaster, with the audience booing. Peter's friend Fuad, who earlier explained sarcasm to him, tries to compliment the film, but Peter cuts him off. The movie itself is a grotesque, misogynistic mess, featuring a woman giving birth to an adult woman covered in SpaghettiOs, and a woman dying from a rotten vagina. The audience's disgust is palpable, with Quagmire calling it the worst piece of crap he's ever seen, and Joe claiming his ass is actually sore. In the aftermath of the movie premiere, Stewie and Brian are in the living room. Brian, seeing Stewie's distress, initiates a poignant scene, echoing a famous moment from Good Will Hunting. He repeatedly tells Stewie, "It's not your fault," trying to break through Stewie's hardened exterior. Stewie, initially resistant, eventually breaks down, crying, "Why is it so hard? I didn't know it was going to be so hard." Brian then offers a mature perspective, telling Stewie that true adulthood means sticking it out when things get tough. Stewie, in a moment of self-reflection, agrees to deal with his relationship, making a racially insensitive comment about black men that Brian attributes to his father, a dark comedic beat. The episode concludes with Stewie and Olivia's relationship deteriorating. They play house in a cardboard box, but their sexless marriage and constant bickering over Play-Doh spaghetti reveal the shallowness and toxicity of their dynamic. Stewie complains about Olivia's lack of sophistication and accuses her of changing the subject when he questions her understanding of sex. At a restaurant double date with Brian and Jillian, their arguments escalate, with Stewie acting like a baby and antagonizing a fellow diner. Finally, Stewie finds Olivia with another boy, Victor, and accusing her of cheating, throws Rupert down and walks away, laughing maniacally as their cardboard house catches fire. "Idea for a farce. Cheating wife and Papa's ass burned alive," he declares, a chilling end to his foray into toxic masculinity. This episode is a deeply melancholic exploration of failed relationships, the destructive nature of adopting harmful social behaviors, and the profound sadness of a love that was never meant to be. Stewie's attempts to embody a grown-up by being cruel ultimately lead to loneliness and a burning, empty cardboard box, highlighting the isolating consequences of seeking validation through destructive means. It's a stark reminder that sometimes the most painful lessons are learned when we try to be someone we're not, leading to genuine heartache and an even deeper sense of isolation. The melancholic spiral of failed romantic pursuits and the harsh realities of accidental culpability left Brian vulnerable. But sometimes the deepest internal struggles are hidden beneath the surface of even the most outwardly confident characters. For Stewie, his intellectual prowess often masks profound anxieties and a constant search for identity. Our journey continues with Season 16, Episode 12, an episode that peels back the layers of Stewie's complex psyche, revealing deep-seated anxieties and an identity in flux, a rare glimpse into his inner turmoil. The episode opens with the standard Family Guy intro, then transitions to a child psychologist's waiting room, a setting that immediately signals an exploration of Stewie's mental state. Dr. Cecil Pritchfield, an older man with glasses, sits in his office, writing on a notepad. Stewie, wearing a small blue backpack, walks in and sits on the couch, looking around with a bored expression. Stewie immediately launches into a verbose, somewhat pretentious rant about celebrities like Bethany Frankel and Andy Cohen, even mentioning a failed opportunity for the Rachel Zoe project. This initial display of his sophisticated, almost adult-like persona is a defense mechanism, a way to project an image of control and worldliness. His disdain for the empty tissue box and Dunkin' Donuts coffee cup on the table next to him further emphasizes his refined, albeit artificial, tastes. He even scoffs at the University of Gondor diploma on the wall, subtly questioning the doctor's credentials. When Dr. Pritchfield finally asks Stewie why he is there, Stewie initially deflects, engaging in a witty banter about opinions and British insults. He becomes agitated when the doctor doesn't acknowledge his own British accent, a significant detail revealing his deep-seated desire for a specific, cultivated identity that he believes he possesses. This moment subtly hints at a disconnect between how Stewie perceives himself and how others see him. The core of Stewie's session unfolds as he gets off the couch and walks to a table, noticing a framed photograph. With startling deductive reasoning, he launches into a detailed monologue, analyzing the photo and making astute observations about Dr. Pritchfield's life, his partner, Michael, their financial status, and their underlying insecurities. He even points to a book of Shakespeare, demonstrating his extensive knowledge. This impressive display of intellect is a classic Stewie trait, but it also serves to intimidate and control the situation, a defense mechanism against his own vulnerabilities. In a bizarre and unsettling turn, Stewie then stands on the couch and begins to sing "My Shot" from the musical Hamilton, but with snot bubbling from his nose. The snot bubble eventually pops, covering his face in green mucus, and he finishes the song by vomiting on the couch. This grotesque display is a raw, physical manifestation of his emotional distress, a moment where his carefully constructed facade cracks, revealing the messy, vulnerable child beneath. Dr. Pritchfield, surprisingly, claps appreciatively, offering a moment of unexpected validation. The session takes a dark, unexpected turn when Dr. Pritchfield, while preparing tea for Stewie, suddenly clutches his chest, has a heart attack, and collapses, dying in his chair. Stewie, now sitting on the floor, calmly reads a magazine, seemingly unfazed by the death. The ringing phone then plays an answering machine message from Michael, Dr. Pritchfield's partner, announcing he wants a divorce, adding another layer of tragedy and irony to the scene. Later that night, Stewie jolts awake from a nightmare. Brian enters his room, asking if he's okay. Stewie, speaking in his regular American accent, a stark contrast to his earlier insistence on his British accent, claims his teddy bear, Rupert, had the nightmare. This shift in accent reveals Stewie's true, unadorned self, dropping the pretense only when he feels safe and vulnerable with Brian. He asks Brian to sleep with him, and Brian, ever the loyal friend, agrees, getting into the crib. As they lie together, Stewie confesses to Brian that he did something awful, but when Brian gently asks if he wants to talk about it, Stewie says no. The episode ends with Brian looking concerned, leaving Stewie's awful act unspoken, a heavy, melancholic secret hanging in the air. This episode is a profound and unsettling exploration of Stewie's complex inner world. His sophisticated intellect, his carefully constructed persona, and his hidden anxieties are all laid bare. The sudden death of his therapist, followed by his own confession of an awful deed, highlights his profound isolation and the burden of his secrets. It's a deeply melancholic look at a genius child grappling with the messy, often dark, realities of his own identity and actions, finding solace only in the quiet comfort of his loyal companion. Stewie's profound anxieties and the unsettling revelations about his identity were laid bare in that therapy session, a melancholic struggle for self-understanding. But even as Stewie grapples with his inner world, Brian, too, faces his own, quieter battles, particularly the nagging despair of unfulfilled potential and academic anxieties that have haunted him for years. 04 Psi, an episode that investigates Brian's, particularly through Meg's contrasting journey of transformation and eventual disillusionment. The episode begins with Meg and her friends in the James Woods Regional High School cafeteria, admiring a rebel boy named Craig Hoffman. Meg, in a fantasy sequence, imagines a romantic picnic with a dead body, highlighting her morbid and often self-deprecating inner world. When she asks Craig out, he brutally rejects her, stating, "I don't go out with dudes." Distraught, Meg returns home and asks her parents if she is ugly. Peter, with his usual bluntness, replies, "Well, he's a sharp kid, you might be ugly," sending Meg into tears. Stewie, observing from his high chair, relishes her anguish, stating, "Yes, yes, your anguish sustains me." Lois, however, offers comfort and suggests a shopping trip for new clothes, including low-rider jeans. Stewie, disgusted by the thought of Meg in such attire, visualizes it and violently beats the thought bubble with a rolling pin. Meanwhile, Peter, Quagmire, Cleveland, and Joe discover that their beloved hangout, the Drunken Clam, is for sale, threatened by a new mega mall. Horace, the owner, explains he's being put out of business. The friends, in an attempt to save the bar, embark on a chaotic 80s-style renovation montage set to one foot in front of the other, only to make things worse, leaving the bar a colorful, broken mess. At the mall, while Lois and Meg shop, Brian is left to supervise Stewie, who, complaining about the danger, climbs onto Brian's back, quoting Yoda. Lois and Meg's shopping trip is equally chaotic, with a saleswoman screaming, setting herself on fire, and running through the store when Lois touches her. Stewie, in a moment of playful rebellion, makes a bet with Brian, strips naked, and runs through the mall shouting, "Help! I've escaped from Kevin Spacey's basement." Lois and Meg, dejected after their failed shopping, pass a news broadcast announcing a mall makeover segment. Lois, seizing an opportunity, enthusiastically volunteers Meg, who is declared the winner after the cameraman, identical to the saleswoman, also sets himself on fire and runs away. Back at the Drunken Clam, the friends are depressed. Peter discovers a karaoke machine and proposes they turn the bar into a karaoke spot. This leads to a montage of them singing "Don't Stop Believin'" by Journey, attracting a crowd, even a funeral procession, to the bar. Energized, they decide to form a rock band. Meg, now with a blonde makeover and stylish outfit, returns home, turning heads. Peter, initially mistaking her for a woman from his past, laughs uncontrollably before welcoming her to the family. This transformation brings Meg newfound popularity at school. Craig Hoffman, who once rejected her, now asks her out, and even the popular girls invite her to hang out. The band, Fat, Horny, Black, and Joe, practices in the garage, with Brian offering cynical criticism. Their first gig is at the Rhode Island State Penitentiary. The warden introduces them, and the band, realizing they don't know any songs, faces an angry mob of prisoners. The entire Griffin family arrives to help, and they perform a pop song in matching orange and yellow outfits, which the prisoners and guards surprisingly love. A man identifying himself as Jimmy Iovine offers them a record deal, and Peter signs the contract on a bald prisoner's butt cheek. The family's band, now renamed Meg and the Griffins, rises to fame. On the tour bus, Brian, attempting a solo, gets electrocuted by a loose plug, a metaphor for his unfulfilled musical aspirations. Dr. Diddy, their music producer, suggests focusing on Meg's sex appeal. Peter agrees, despite Lois's concerns, and Meg, surprisingly, asserts her desire to be exploited. Lois worries about Meg's new attitude, but Peter dismisses it with a bizarre flashback to his time performing for President George W. Bush. The band is set to perform on Saturday Night Live. In her dressing room, Meg is invited to Jimmy Fallon's room. Peter and Lois, watching the show, are horrified to see the opening sequence is a video of Meg and Jimmy Fallon having sex. Meg returns to the green room, crying, realizing she was used. Peter, enraged, goes on stage and beats up Jimmy Fallon, yelling, "This is for laughing and looking at the camera during every sketch you've ever been in." The episode concludes with the family back home, with Meg returning to her old self, glad to be the real me again. The scene then pulls back to reveal the living room is a set, and the entire cast, including all the characters from the episode, takes a bow. Brian is then shown alone on the couch, watching Showtime at the Apollo, turning it off because he's tired, denying it's because it's a black show. This episode, through Meg's transformative and ultimately heartbreaking journey, explores themes of self-worth, external validation, and exploitation. Brian's underlying anxieties about his own unfulfilled potential are subtly woven into his cynical commentary on the band's success and his own electrocuted solo. It's a melancholic tale about the fleeting nature of fame and the painful reality that chasing external validation often leads to being used, leaving one with a deeper sense of emptiness and a return to the quiet despair of who they truly are. Stewie's hidden anxieties and the unsettling truth about his identity were revealed in that therapy session, leaving a trail of questions about his inner world. But Stewie isn't alone in his internal struggles. Brian, too, often grapples with the quiet despair of unfulfilled potential, particularly in his artistic aspirations, where the pursuit of an elusive dream can lead to soul-crushing realities. 07 Chi, an episode that charts Brian's artistic aspirations and the soul-crushing realities of pursuing an elusive dream, exposing his vulnerability to superficiality and public humiliation. The episode opens with Peter, Quagmire, Cleveland, and Joe at the Hotspot nightclub. Joe tries to encourage Cleveland to meet women, but Cleveland is rejected by a woman who is then whisked away by a giant, anthropomorphic, burnt sienna crayon. This comedic scene, while absurd, sets a subtle tone for the episode's exploration of rejection and unfulfilled desires. Back at the Griffin house, Lois attempts to feed Stewie cereal, but he smacks the spoon away, making a dark joke. Chris then enters, sporting a large, red pimple he has named Doug, which he treats as a sentient being. Brian, disgusted, complains about having to look at it, leading to a typical sibling squabble. A flashback shows Peter in a hospital bed, lifting the covers after a successful operation, a moment of fleeting relief. Chris's pimple Doug encourages him to raise some hell, leading Chris to rip off his shirt, unknowingly being watched by Herbert, who falls off his ladder in perverse delight. The main plot unfolds as news anchor Tom Tucker announces auditions for The Bachelorette in Quahog. Meg gets excited, but it is Brian who ultimately auditions, impressing the producers with his intelligence after Peter and Cleveland's disastrous, naked attempt to audition. This unexpected opportunity seems to be a chance for Brian to step into the spotlight, but the reality of reality television is far from glamorous. On the ABC tour bus, Brian sits alone, reading a newspaper, while other contestants, including Quagmire, are excited. Brian's isolation is already palpable. A flashback shows Quagmire's strange audition, checking the room for monsters. Meanwhile, Chris, encouraged by Doug, sneaks out of the house to light a paper bag of feces on fire on Joe's doorstep, a childish act of rebellion. The contestants arrive at a lavish mansion, where they are greeted by the host and the bachelorette, Brooke. Brian, introduced as Brian 7 Dog, attempts to navigate the superficial world of reality TV. He is given a donkey on a horseback riding date, which is comically transformed into Battle Cat by He-Man. Brian, however, finds a genuine connection with Brooke in a stable, where they bond over jazz music and their shared dislike for the show's superficiality. Brian, in a confessional, reveals he's fallen in love. Lois and Peter, meanwhile, suspect Chris of stealing Mort Goldman's acne medication after a pharmacy window is shattered. A flashback shows a young Lois making a plaster cast of Daryl Hall's groin, a bizarre insight into her past. At the final rose ceremony, Brian and Quagmire are the last two contestants. Brooke gives a rose to Quagmire, then, in a dramatic turn, gives the final rose to Brian. Brian, overjoyed, talks about being in love and sings a snippet of a love song. The host then announces that Brooke will meet the families. Peter's enthusiastic, but rude, greeting of Brian and Brooke, followed by his tripping and falling, sets a chaotic tone for the family visit. Dinner at the Griffin household descends into chaos. Stewie insults Brooke. Peter asks inappropriate questions, and Chris, urged on by Doug, lifts Brooke's shirt. the family erupts into a fight. In his room, a sad Chris tells Doug that he made his mom cry. Doug, ever the instigator, tells Chris to rub bacon grease on his face, leading to more pimples with faces appearing, a grotesque manifestation of Chris's internal conflict. At sunset by the ocean, Brooke initially tells Brian she's choosing Quagmire, breaking his heart, only to reveal she's choosing him, a dramatic twist. They embrace and kiss, but the camera pulls back to reveal a full film crew, and a director yells, "That's a wrap." Brooke then coldly tells Brian it was great working with him, revealing it was all for the show. Brian is utterly devastated. Michael Eisner, former CEO of Disney, which owns ABC, hands Brian a bill for the mansion, adding insult to injury. Brian's heartbreak is profound. He repeatedly calls Brooke, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails until her mailbox is full. He even mails her an answering machine, which she throws from her apartment balcony, smashing it near Brian, who is in her yard below. His attempt to serenade her with a guitar ends with him being knocked out by another thrown object. In a subplot, Chris goes to a dermatology clinic to get rid of Doug. Doug, now armed with a gun, holds it to Chris's head, but Chris manages to inject the pimple with a syringe, causing Doug to scream and deflate, a symbolic end to Chris's misguided rebellion. The episode concludes with Brian sitting on the living room couch, drinking a martini, completely depressed. Stewie sits next to him and, after a moment of feigned sympathy, relentlessly mocks Brian's long unfinished novel. This final scene is a stark portrayal of Brian's despair, his artistic aspirations mocked, and his emotional vulnerability exposed, particularly in the superficial world of reality television. Brian's genuine desire for love and recognition is exploited, leaving him heartbroken and humiliated. His artistic aspirations are not only unfulfilled, but become a source of ridicule, highlighting the quiet despair of a character constantly striving for something more, only to be met with crushing disappointment and the bitter taste of a martini. Brian's soul-crushing experience on The Bachelorette and his mocked artistic aspirations left him deeply depressed, highlighting the despair of unfulfilled potential. But even as individuals grapple with their own quiet sorrows, the bonds of family can also fray, revealing the somber strains within a marriage as it grapples with the specter of separation. 19 Durares, an episode that observes the somber strains within Peter and Lois's marriage as they grapple with the specter of separation, revealing the deep insecurities and possessiveness lurking beneath their comedic dynamic. The episode opens with the Griffin family at Costmart, a bulk warehouse store. Peter, pushing a shopping cart with Stewie, is impressed by the store's offerings, while Lois asks Brian to watch Stewie, referencing a past incident where Stewie damaged a lamp by jumping on a bed. Meanwhile, Lois and Meg are in the piano aisle, attempting to pull a large black piano from a high shelf. As it tips over, Lois spots an old college friend, Ross Fishman, and, oblivious to Meg being crushed beneath the falling piano, happily greets him. A Gallagher-like character then smashes a watermelon on the piano, splattering Meg to the crowd's applause, a darkly comedic moment of Meg's perpetual suffering. A more significant problem arises when Stewie, at a shelf of super adhesive industrial glue, attempts to drink it. Brian intervenes, but their hands become irreversibly stuck together by the never comes unstuck, guaranteed glue. They look at each other in wide-eyed horror, facing 2 weeks until a solvent arrives. Brian, ever pragmatic, blackmails Stewie into silence by threatening to show Lois photos of Stewie in her wedding dress. Lois and Ross continue their conversation at the checkout line. Ross, also married, suggests they get coffee, and Lois, though hesitant, takes his business card, looking thoughtful. This seemingly innocent exchange plants a seed of marital discord. Peter and Chris, meanwhile, are in an aisle labeled human kidneys, a bizarre detail that speaks to the show's dark humor. Back home, Brian, still glued to Stewie, explains that the solvent will take 2 weeks. Lois, oblivious to their predicament, vents to Brian about Peter's intense jealousy. Flashbacks illustrate Peter's possessiveness, attacking Hugh Grant on a movie screen, punching a concert singer, and smashing a mirror after Lois compliments his reflection. These moments reveal Peter's deep-seated insecurity and his need to control Lois's affections. Lois, deciding to call Ross, leaves Brian and Stewie to their predicament. Peter, meanwhile, is with Chris, watching a parody of Magnum P.I. He then asks Chris to get him a beer, calling him Lois, and proceeds to insult Chris for letting himself go, causing Chris to cry. This further highlights Peter's insensitivity and projections. The Neighborhood Watch subplot, featuring Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland in a high-tech surveillance van, adds another layer to Peter's paranoia. In the van, Joe demonstrates a minority suspect restraining device on Cleveland, which consists of robotic arms beating him with nightsticks, a disturbing piece of social commentary. They use the van's surveillance to spy on Lois, discovering her with Ross at a diner. Peter, agitated, overhears Quagmire's inner thoughts about a rash, adding to the chaotic scene. Peter, desperate, visits his old girlfriends to make Lois jealous. His encounters are predictably disastrous and melancholic. Brenda, now with an eye patch, a hairy mole, and breastfeeding 2 babies while smoking. Patty, who is revealed to be a lesbian with a partner. And Angie, who, wearing a tattered prom dress, shows Peter a toilet containing a piece of his feces from prom night, which she then eats. These encounters are not only grotesque, but deeply sad, revealing the faded hopes and strange realities of Peter's past. Brian, still glued to Stewie, is pulled over by a police officer who questions why he is holding an infant's hand. Stewie, in a moment of mischievousness, claims Brian lured him with candy. However, the officer, who reveals he has a conjoined twin partner, lets them go, a moment of unexpected empathy. Back home, Peter brings Dora, a promiscuous-looking old girlfriend, to dinner to make Lois jealous. Lois, seeing this, is clearly upset. The doorbell rings again, and Quagmire, with flowers, asks Lois out. After Lois hesitates, Quagmire breaks a grandfather clock's glass and rapidly spins the hands forward, comically asking, "How about now?" Lois agrees to go out with him. The climax unfolds at a restaurant where Peter is on a date with Jennifer Love Hewitt, and Lois is on a date with Quagmire at the same place. Peter aggressively shoves a meatball into Jennifer's mouth, who, despite calling him vile and disgusting, is also turned on and kisses him on the table. Lois, witnessing this, is enraged. She pulls Jennifer off Peter, and they engage in a physical fight. Lois, finally understanding Peter's intense jealousy, confesses that seeing him with another woman made her crazy. They reconcile, hugging, with Peter turned on by her jealousy. Quagmire, dejected, approaches Jennifer at the bar, offering to buy her a drink. This episode is a melancholic exploration of marital insecurity, the destructive nature of jealousy, and the desperate, often bizarre, lengths people will go to maintain control in a relationship. Peter and Lois's reconciliation is born not of healthy communication, but of a shared, volatile possessiveness. It's a somber commentary on the complex and often dysfunctional dynamics of love, where the fear of separation can lead to deeply unsettling behaviors and profound emotional strain. The melancholic strains of Peter and Lois's marriage, tested by jealousy and insecurity, revealed the fragility of their bond. But sometimes, family discord runs even deeper, rooted in long-standing grievances and estranged relationships that leave enduring wounds, even when veiled by the absurd. Our journey continues with Season 14, Episode 06, an episode that dissects the enduring wounds of familial discord and the pain of an estranged relationship, particularly between Peter and his sister, Karen. The episode opens with Brian and Stewie in the kitchen, Brian listening to music on a laptop, while Stewie, energized by a Monster energy drink, makes a dark joke. Lois enters, carrying a raw turkey, and the family later gathers in the living room, watching a parody of Friends titled Guy Friends. This initial domestic scene belies the deeper familial tensions about to be unearthed. Meg enters, bringing in the mail, which includes a political flyer and 2 envelopes for Lois. Peter sits on the couch with his lawyer, looking annoyed, as Lois explains the contents of the mail. A flashback shows a younger Peter being tickled by 2 older men in a basement, a cryptic and unsettling detail. The scene then cuts to a Back to the Future style title card, "To be contundered," as Marty McFly looks at a fading photo of his family, now missing 2 members, a subtle foreshadowing of familial absence and disconnection. The central conflict arrives with the arrival of Peter's estranged sister, Karen. Meg opens the front door to a large, masculine-looking woman who gives both Meg and Chris powerful, bone-crushing hugs. Peter reluctantly stands up as Karen gives him a noogie, a childish act of aggression that hints at a long history of sibling rivalry and unresolved issues. Quagmire, Cleveland, and Joe greet Karen, while a woman named Rosario Vargas stands at the door with a casserole dish. A flashback reveals Karen's past as a professional wrestler named Heavy Flow in a red and yellow outfit, explaining her physical dominance. Another unsettling flashback shows Superman standing over a bloody crime scene, an incongruous image that adds to the episode's dark undertones. The family and neighbors gather for Thanksgiving dinner, a setting traditionally associated with harmony, but here it becomes a stage for conflict. Later, during a backyard football game, Karen tackles Peter and gives him another noogie, further humiliating him. Stewie and Cleveland Jr. watch from the side, while Meg looks on with concern. Meg finds Peter sitting alone and sad at the kitchen table. A montage of clips shows Peter bullying Meg in various ways, a moment of self-reflection that leads to Peter's realization. He decides to confront Karen, but not directly. Instead, he decides to become a lady wrestler named Maxie Patty, complete with a green and orange wrestling outfit and a red wig, much to the shock of Lois and Chris. Peter, Quagmire, Cleveland, and Joe prepare in the garage, with Cleveland giving them pills, a cutaway gag showing a chaotic scene at Chico's Monkey Farm. The Divas of Wrestling Championship at the New Haven Coliseum becomes the arena for Peter and Karen's confrontation. Karen, as Heavy Flow, is dominating another wrestler, celebrating her victory with the championship belt. Peter, as Maxie Patty, confronts her from outside the ring, leading to a brutal wrestling match where Karen initially dominates. Just as Peter is about to lose, Meg, now dressed as a wrestler named Teen Laquifa in a pink and yellow outfit, enters the ring and hits Karen with a chair. Meg then pins Karen, winning the match, a surprising moment of triumph and empowerment for Meg. Peter and Meg hug in the middle of the ring, a rare moment of genuine connection between them. Stewie, dressed as a pimp with a woman beside him, appears in the ring, announcing he is now in charge of the show, a final absurd twist. The episode concludes with the Griffin family back on the couch. Peter is on the phone, looking concerned, telling Lois that the doctor says there's nothing they can do. This ominous and unexplained ending leaves a lingering sense of melancholic dread, hinting at an unresolved crisis, possibly related to Peter's wrestling injuries, or the deeper familial damage that has been exposed. This episode is a profound exploration of complex sibling relationships, the pain of long-standing family feuds, and the unexpected ways in which characters find agency and connection. Peter's desperate attempt to assert himself against his sister and Meg's surprising intervention highlight the enduring, often painful, dynamics of family. The melancholic undertone stems from the unresolved anger, the physical and emotional scars, and the unsettling, ambiguous ending that suggests some wounds may never truly heal. The raw, unhealed wounds of Peter's familial discord with Karen and Meg's surprising triumph in the wrestling ring showed the deep-seated pains that can fester within a family. Yet, beyond the personal, there's a wider, more systemic sadness that often permeates the world of Quahog, a deep disillusionment with political systems, and the wider societal malaise that leaves characters feeling helpless and exploited. $03, an episode that reflects on Peter's disillusionment with the political system and the wider societal malaise as he grapples with corporate corruption and the cynical manipulation of the public. The episode opens with Lois discovering Stewie's secret arsenal in his nursery closet, a chilling glimpse into his violent tendencies. She then falls through a trapdoor into a vast military-grade hangar, where Stewie, sitting in a futuristic purple chair, menacingly claps and reveals the extent of his weaponry. He then presses a button, sending Lois screaming into darkness, a nightmarish moment that highlights his capacity for extreme cruelty. Lois, however, wakes up, revealing it was all a dream, though the lingering unease of Stewie's potential remains. The main plot unfolds as Peter, at a baseball game with his family, snatches a foul ball from a boy in a wheelchair. He gives the ball to Stewie, who then trades it for a miniature bat, only to hit the other boy over the head and take the ball back, a darkly comedic moment of Stewie's opportunistic nature. At the game, Peter's boss, Mr. Weed, joins them. Later, Mr. Weed, looking distraught, informs Peter that he has been fired from Happy-Go-Lucky Toys, Inc. The company has been bought out by the El Dorado Cigarette Company, a new division that quickly transforms the toy factory into a cynical front for cigarette advertising. Executives from the cigarette company gleefully throw and shoot a white poodle, laughing maniacally, a chilling display of corporate callousness and disregard for life. Peter, initially oblivious, is excited by the new owner's raises. However, he soon discovers the insidious nature of their business. The company produces a Baby Smokes a Lot doll, which has a cigarette in its mouth and blows smoke, a horrifying symbol of their target demographic. Brian, examining the doll, points out the El Dorado cigarettes branding, and Lois looks on in horror. A black and white parody of Lassie includes subliminal messages like smoke and "Are you smoking yet?", exposing the manipulative tactics used to hook children. Peter, initially a complacent employee, begins to feel a sense of moral responsibility. He imagines himself as president in the Oval Office, doing a high-kick dance, a fantasy of power and influence. He tries to fire one of his newly hired, seemingly Jewish joke writers, then finds himself giving nonsensical testimony before Congress, where he is dragged away by police officers. This series of events highlights Peter's struggle to navigate the complex, often corrupt, world of politics and corporate power. The cigarette company launches a new advertising campaign, featuring Peter himself in various ads, water skiing on a woman's shoulders, dressed as a cowboy, and with two women at a table. These ads are designed to make smoking look appealing and sophisticated, further cementing the company's cynical agenda. The moral crisis comes to a head when Lois discovers Stewie smoking a cigarette, a direct consequence of the company's influence. Lois is horrified, and she and the kids run out of the house in distress. Peter, witnessing this, has a change of heart. The climax takes place at the U.S. Capitol building, where a tobacco vote is scheduled. Peter, now advocating against the cigarette company, is about to give his speech. Lois confronts him, holding Stewie, who is now coughing, a stark visual representation of the harm caused by smoking. Peter, seeing Stewie's suffering, realizes the devastating impact of his company's actions. During his speech, Peter, initially supported by his previously fired joke writers, has a moment of profound realization when he sees a baby in the audience, coughing, mirroring Stewie. He changes his speech, passionately advocating against smoking, exposing the company's deceptive tactics, and revealing their plans to target children. His powerful testimony leads to the tobacco bill passing. The episode concludes with the Griffin family driving in their car, with Brian smoking in the passenger seat. Peter and Lois reconcile, and the family is shown in a rustic, barn-like setting, addressing the audience. This final scene, while attempting to wrap things up with a sense of moral victory, is still tinged with the melancholic reality that the fight against corporate greed and societal manipulation is ongoing, and that even personal triumphs are part of a larger, often exhausting struggle. This episode is a profound, albeit darkly comedic reflection on political disillusionment, corporate exploitation, and the struggle for moral integrity in a corrupt world. Peter's journey from unwitting participant to passionate advocate highlights the wider societal malaise where powerful entities cynically manipulate the public for profit. The melancholic undertone stems from the realization that such battles are constant, and even small victories come at a significant personal cost, leaving a lingering sense of unease about the world they inhabit. Peter's battle against corporate cynicism exposed the corrupt underbelly of society, a melancholic reflection on their world. But beyond the present, Peter often harbors a deeper, almost existential yearning, a sense of destiny and loss that transcends his current reality. This next chapter delves into his past lives, revealing recurring themes of love, loss, and the bittersweet dance of fate. 16. An episode that journeys through Peter's past lives, highlighting recurring themes of loss, destiny, and yearning, and revealing a profound, almost tragic, connection to Lois that spans centuries. The episode opens at the Drunken Clam, where Peter, Joe, and Quagmire are lamenting Cleveland's absence, with Peter remarking that Cleveland's beer looks lonelier than Alan Rickman's answering machine. A cutaway gag then shows Alan Rickman's answering machine receiving messages from himself, a humorous but melancholic depiction of isolation. Cleveland eventually arrives with his cousin from Jamaica, Madame Claude, a woman who claims to be psychic. Peter, initially skeptical, jokes that he already knows his past life, claiming he was a strawberry, which leads to a horrifying cutaway, where Peter, as a strawberry, is violated by a worm, and then cries in a shower, lamenting he'll never end up in a fancy pie. This absurd but dark sequence sets a tone for the unexpected revelations to come. Madame Claude then gives past life readings to Joe and Quagmire. Joe is revealed to have been an octopus whose tentacles were bitten off by fish, and Quagmire, much to his delight, was Jack the Ripper in 1800s London, a disturbing and darkly humorous twist. The true emotional core of the episode lies in Peter's reading. Madame Claude reveals that Peter was Griffin Peterson, the founder of Quahog, a fact that contradicts the school's historical narrative of Miles Chatterbox Musket. This revelation plunges Peter into a long, elaborate flashback sequence depicting his ancestor, Griffin Peterson, in 17th or 18th century England. In this past life, Griffin is deeply in love with Lois's ancestor, Lady Redbush. He proposes to her, but their love is thwarted by King Stewie III, who also desires Lady Redbush. King Stewie, in a fit of jealousy, exiles Griffin to the New World. Griffin and his fellow colonists, ancestors of Quagmire and Joe, embark on a perilous journey and eventually found the colony of Quahog. This origin story is filled with hardship and the melancholic longing for a lost love. Meanwhile, Lady Redbush, believing Griffin to be dead, reluctantly marries King Stewie. Years pass, and Lady Redbush eventually learns that Griffin is alive. Driven by an enduring love, she sails to Quahog to reunite with him. However, fate, in its cruel irony, intervenes once more. Upon her arrival, she discovers that Griffin, believing her to be lost forever, has married Meg's ancestor. This is a moment of profound sadness, a love that transcends time, yet is constantly thwarted. The conflict escalates as King Stewie and his army invade Quahog to reclaim his wife. To settle the dispute, they agree to a talent show, a bizarre but fitting resolution for Family Guy. Griffin's group performs a rock song, winning the competition and the right to the colony, and, more importantly, to Lady Redbush. The sequence ends with Griffin and Lady Redbush finally happily together in their new home, a bittersweet triumph after centuries of separation and misunderstanding. The episode concludes with the end credits, leaving the audience to ponder the profound implications of Peter's past lives. This episode is a deeply melancholic and romantic exploration of destiny, enduring love, and the recurring patterns of loss and reunion across generations. Peter's connection to Lois, spanning centuries and fraught with obstacles, highlights a sense of fated love that is both epic and tragic. The constant thwarting of their union, the moments of missed opportunities, and the ultimate hard-won happiness are imbued with a profound sense of yearning. It suggests that even in a comedic world, some connections are so deep that they transcend time, carrying with them the bittersweet weight of lives unlived and loves nearly lost. Peter's passionate, albeit chaotic, stand against corporate exploitation was a moment of moral clarity, but it also revealed the wider societal malaise that can feel overwhelming. Yet, beyond the struggles of their own timeline, there's an even more profound melancholic concept: the existential weight of endless possibilities and the sorrow of alternate, unlived lives across the multiverse. Our journey concludes with Season 09, Episode 01, an episode that explores, ultimately highlighting the precariousness of their own existence. The episode begins with a poignant tribute for Perry McFarlane, a black-bordered photograph of a smiling woman, immediately setting a melancholic tone before the usual Family Guy intro. The story opens with Peter receiving a mysterious invitation to a gala dinner in your honor at Rocky Point Manor for the whole family, a free weekend getaway. Lois is suspicious, but Peter, undeterred, insists they go, dismissing Brian's concerns that it's a scam. Brian, traumatized by the thought of being left at the kennel, protests, recounting a past experience that felt like 10 years with no clock there. Stewie, ever the observant one, adds, "You stink when you come out of there." Peter, ignoring their concerns, declares, "Hillary Clinton's the VP," showcasing his characteristic nonsensical logic. The family embarks on a long, winding car journey, with Peter enjoying his solitude, practicing funny voices, and lamenting that he wishes he had more time to myself. This moment of introspection, while comedic, touches on a deeper human desire for self-discovery and unlived potentials. The drive culminates in the revelation of their destination: a massive, dark, Gothic-style manor on a small, isolated island, accessible only by a single bridge. Upon arrival, they discover that many other Quahog residents have also been invited for a dinner in their honor, including Joe and Bonnie Swanson, Mort and Muriel Goldman, Quagmire with his date Stephanie, Carl, Tom Tucker, Diane Simmons, and Mayor Adam West. Seamus, the sailor with wooden limbs, even rows up to the shore. The double doors of the grand, dimly lit foyer close behind them, trapping them in the opulent yet ominous manor. Consuela, the maid, appears, misusing the title Mr. for everyone, a running gag that lightens the tension. Mayor West, ever eccentric, reveals he's left the city in the hands of the Mayor-O-Matic 5000, a robot made from a broom. The guests, dressed in formal wear, gather in the dining hall. James Woods enters, introducing his companion, Priscilla. The atmosphere is tense. Brian tries to open a champagne bottle, but the cork shoots out, hitting Stephanie in the chest, killing her. Tom Tucker confirms her death, stating she's been shot. The lights then go out, a scream is heard, and when they flicker back on, James Woods is found dead with a knife in his back. Panic ensues. The group rushes outside to find the front gate closed and the bridge destroyed by a lightning strike, leaving them stranded. Peter's car crashes, and the Griffin's vehicle teeters on the edge of the broken bridge before Lois manages to back it up just as it collapses completely. Trapped, they huddle in the library. Joe declares there's no way out. They decide to split up to search the house. Peter pairs himself with Lois, while Chris is sent to the basement with Herbert. Brian and Stewie, in a moment of comedic deflection, refuse to go with Meg, claiming they were planning his birthday present. The horror continues as Muriel Goldman is found dead, stabbed with the same knife. More bodies are discovered. Derek, killed by a Golden Globe Award, and Tom Tucker, dead from a head wound. The killer is revealed to be Diane Simmons, who confesses her motive for revenge on Tom Tucker and James Woods, explaining how she manipulated everyone. Peter bursts in, oblivious, trying to play his cassette tapes, a comedic counterpoint to the deadly drama. Diane and Lois struggle on the edge of a cliff. As Diane is about to push Lois off, a shot rings out. Diane is hit and falls into the water below. Lois looks up to see Stewie in a tower window, sniper rifle in hand. "If anybody's going to take that bitch down, it's going to be me," he declares, a chilling display of his dark, protective side. The sun rises, and Lois stands alone on the island. Police arrive, and Tom Tucker is taken away in handcuffs, a bizarre twist given his earlier death. The remaining survivors leave the manor. The episode concludes with a panoramic view of the isolated manor, a chilling testament to the night of terror. This episode, through its whodunit mystery and brutal culling of characters, subtly explores the fragility of existence and the arbitrary nature of life and death, particularly for supporting characters. The idea that so many alternate lives could be extinguished in a single night, and the casual way in which some characters are dispatched, evokes a melancholic sense of the vast, often indifferent, multiverse. The unlived lives of those who perished and the precarious survival of the main characters leave a lingering, unsettling feeling about the sheer number of possibilities that are constantly being pruned away. It's a reminder that every choice, every chance encounter, dictates an existence, and for every life lived, countless others remain unfulfilled, a truly depressive thought to fall asleep to. From Brian's heartbreaking journey to find his origins to Stewie's existential crisis and Peter's battles with corporate cynicism, we've seen the profound, melancholic depths hidden within Quahog. These are the unsettling truths and unlived lives that linger long after the laughter fades, reminding us that even in comedy, sadness has a profound story to tell.